Hey guys, welcome back to Walk and Study. Today we're going to be going over a number of hyper-advanced vocabulary words again, and I thought it might be nice to do these words in a slightly more sedate setting. So a setting that was a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more tranquil, and a little bit calmer. So as we work through these today, I hope that the difficulty of the words is offset a little bit by the beauty and the tranquility of the surroundings. All right, with that, let's get started. Our first word is enigma. Enigma is a noun. It means a puzzle or a mystery. Putting enigma into a sentence, we could say, since I am not good at math, physics has always been something of an enigma to me. So because I'm not very good at math, physics has always been something of a puzzle to me. We could also say, until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, ancient Egyptian script was an enigma. So until the discovery of something that explained the language, that being the Rosetta Stone, ancient Egyptian was a mystery, an enigma, a puzzle to people trying to understand the language. We could also say, my brother is an enigma to me. He is always doing things I just can't understand. So my brother is a puzzle or a mystery to me because he is always doing things that I just don't get. Our next word is zeal. Zeal is a noun and it means passion or excitement. Putting zeal into a sentence, we could say, she brought her typical zeal to the project, sparking enthusiasm in the other team members. So she brought passion and excitement to the project, and her passion sparked or created enthusiasm in the other team members. We could also say, the chef's zeal for Turkish cuisine was second to none. So the chef's enthusiasm or excitement for Turkish food was second to no one. He was the most passionate, the most zealous. Our next word is gullible. Gullible is an adjective, and it means easily deceived. Putting gullible into a sentence, we could say, the con man pretended to be a bank teller so as to fool gullible bank customers into giving him their account information. We could also say, the gullible teacher believed every excuse her students had for why they didn't do their homework. So the easily deceived teacher believed all the lies her students told her about why they didn't do their homework. Gullible is a word that you're likely to hear pretty often, actually. It's a word that you're likely to hear in American television shows, probably. Honestly, I'm not sure it really fits the definition, the exact definition of a hyper-advanced word, which I suppose has no definition at all, but it's a good word for you to know, so that's why I've included it here. Okay, our next word is jocular. Jocular is an adjective, and it means playful or humorous. To use jocular in a sentence, we could say, the jocular old man entertained his grandchildren for hours with jokes and games. So the playful and humorous old man entertained his grandchildren with games. We could also use jocular in a slightly more negative context and say, the jocular employee distracted all of his co-workers with his jokes and pranks. So the playful and humorous employee distracted his fellow co-workers. Our next word is trenchant. Trenchant is an adjective that means acute, kind of sharp or incisive. And it can also mean forceful and effective. To put trenchant into a sentence, we could say, Jim's trenchant observations in class made him the teacher's favorite student. So Jim's sharp or effective observations made the teacher like him most. We could also say, the journalist's trenchant reporting made her an enemy of the government. So the journalist's incisive or effective reporting made her an enemy of the government. So presumably she's reporting on the government itself, and they're somewhat angry with her trenchant observations. We could also say, the writer's trenchant new novel criticizes consumerism in modern America. Our next word is turgid. Turgid is an adjective that means swollen from fluid or kind of bloated and enlarged. So we could say, the heavy rains transformed the usually calm river into a turgid and fast-moving mess. So the heavy rains turned what is usually a tranquil river into a swollen and enlarged mess because it added more water to the river. We can also use turgid to refer to the spoken or written word. In that instance, turgid means kind of affected or pompous, maybe a little bit overblown. An example sentence might be, the poet's turgid verses gained him no fans. So the poet's overblown and kind of flowery language didn't gain him any fans because no one liked his work. Our next word is alleviate. Alleviate is a verb and it means to make more bearable. To use alleviate in a sentence, we could say, whenever I have a headache, I take an aspirin to alleviate the discomfort. So whenever my head hurts, I take an aspirin and it makes the pain more bearable. It alleviates the pain. As you can probably guess, this word is used a lot in a more medical context, because in a medical context, we're often talking about things that reduce our pain. However, to use the word in a non-medical context, we could say something like, the government passed a new law aimed at alleviating the financial pain felt by farmers. So in this instance, the government has passed a law that's trying to make the financial pain of the farmers more bearable. Our next word is kindle. Kindle is a verb, and it means to set fire to or ignite, to kind of excite or inspire. So we could say, the philosopher's ideas kindled political action in the country's youth. So the philosopher's ideas excited or inspired political action in the country's young people. We can also use kindle with its more literal definition, which is to set fire to something or ignite something. So we could say, while they were camping, LeBron ignited a fire to keep everybody warm. Speaking of LeBron, we could also say, when LeBron James moved to the Los Angeles Lakers, he kindled hope in their fans that the Lakers would once more become a basketball dynasty. So when LeBron moved to the Lakers, he aroused or awakened hope in their fans that the Lakers would once again become perennial or kind of year after year winners. Okay, that's kindle. Our next word is analogous. Analogous is an adjective, and it means similar or alike in some way or kind of equivalent to. So we could say, his mother argued that not going to college was analogous to throwing his life away. So this person's mother is saying that not going to college is similar or alike in some way to throwing her son's life away. We could also say, getting an education at Harvard is analogous to getting an education at Princeton. So getting an education at one of those two Ivy League schools is comparable or alike to getting an education at the other school. Our next word is innocuous. Innocuous is an adjective and it means harmless. So we could say, some snakes are poisonous, but most species are innocuous and pose no danger to humans. So while some snakes are poisonous and will hurt you, most are innocuous, are harmless. We could also say, although Jill meant her comment to be innocuous, Jack took great offense. So although Jill didn't mean anything by her comment, she thought it was just a harmless throwaway thing to say, Jack actually took great offense. Our next word is ingratiate. Ingratiate is a verb, and it means to gain someone's favor or to please them with deliberate effort. So we could say, the new intern tried to ingratiate herself with her boss so that she might be considered for a future job. So the intern tried to gain the favor of her boss with deliberate effort so that she could gain an advantage, a new job, in the future. We could also say, I tried to ingratiate myself with my sister's new baby by giving him a brand new toy. I'm deliberately trying to get the baby to like me by giving it a toy. I'm ingratiating myself to the baby. Our next word is impasse. Impasse is a noun, and it means a blocked path, or kind of a dilemma with no solution. So, in its literal sense, we could say, the earthquake produced a rock slide that led to an impasse on the mountain road. So the earthquake shook a bunch of rocks loose, and those rocks rolled onto the road and blocked the way. We could also say, after many months of negotiation, the politicians realized that they were at an impasse regarding the new bill. So after many months of trying to get this bill passed into law, the politicians realized that they were stuck. They couldn't go any further. They were at an impasse. Our next word is frugality. Frugality is a noun, and it means tending to be thrifty or cheap. So someone who is economical, who is kind of sparing with the way they use money, they're frugal. To put frugality into a sentence, we could say, the old man's well-known frugality meant that many children skipped his house on Halloween. So the old man's well-known tendency to be kind of cheap led the children to skip his house on Halloween, likely because they knew they wouldn't get good candy. We could also say people who are in debt should focus more on frugality. So people that owe money should focus more on being thrifty or cheap and not spending money. Our next word is arbitrary. Arbitrary is an adjective, and it means kind of determined by chance or by randomness, by things outside of one's control. So we could say, while some people claim that the universe is arbitrary, other people claim that it is controlled by destiny. So while some people say that the universe is essentially random, other people say that destiny is what's kind of pulling the strings. Another example sentence might be, Virgil thought that the basketball coach's team selection was arbitrary and not based on the player's skills. So Virgil thought that the basketball coach's choice of who would play was determined by chance or randomness or impulse, kind of by the way the coach was feeling that day, rather than by how skilled the players actually were. We could also say, the CEO's arbitrary decision-making made some of his colleagues question his judgment. So the CEO's random decision-making made some of the people he worked with question how good he actually was at making decisions. Our next word is tome. Tome is a noun, and it means a book that is usually kind of large and academic. So if we were to use tome in a sentence, we might say, when the professor assigned the lengthy tome, all of her students groaned. So when the professor assigned the large and long book, all of her students made very unhappy noises. We could also say something like, although the young writer originally intended to write a magazine article, she ended up writing a 700-page tome. Okay, tome. Big, large academic text. Got it. Our next word is imprecation. Imprecation is a noun, and it means a curse. So we could say, after the garbage truck dumped 700 pounds of trash into the man's new convertible, he screamed imprecations at the truck driver. We could also say, Some people wanted to ban the new book because they claimed it was filled with imprecations. So some people wanted the book banned because they thought that it was filled with curses or four-letter words, obscenities. In addition to defining imprecation as an obscenity, that kind of curse, imprecation can also mean a magical curse, so a hex, kind of like that. So a sentence might be, Harry and Hermione cast their imprecations at Lord Voldemort. So Harry and Hermione cast their spells, their curses, at Lord Voldemort. Our next word is torpor. Torpor is a noun, and it means extreme physical and mental sluggishness, or kind of a slowness. To use it in a sentence, we could say, though I thought I slept well last night, I've spent much of the day in a torpor. So although I thought I'd gotten a good night's sleep last night, I've actually spent most of today in a state of mental or physical slowness or dullness, kind of a drowsiness. We could also say, after the surgery, the patient's torpor lasted several hours until the anesthesia wore off. After the surgery, then, the patient felt a kind of slowness and weariness, a tiredness, until the medicine wore off and they were feeling normal again. Our next word is transitory. Transitory is an adjective, and it means temporary or lasting a brief time. We could say, the English teacher lived a transitory life, staying in one country only long enough to teach a few students and learn about the culture before she moved to another place. We could also say, history is filled with examples of transitory civilizations. So history is filled with examples of civilizations that were temporary or impermanent, civilizations that only lasted a brief time. Oh, we could also say, learning to speak English fluently requires more than a transitory effort. So learning to speak English fluently requires more than a temporary or passing effort. You have to really stick with it. Our next word is apostate. Apostate is a noun, and it means someone who renounces a religion or faith. To put it in a sentence, we could say, so that King Henry VIII could divorce his wife, he declared himself an apostate and left the Catholic Church. So because King Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce, he renounced or gave up his religious faith and left the church. We could also say, although the man claimed to be an apostate, he secretly worshipped in his home. So although he claimed to have renounced his faith or to have given up his faith, he secretly remained faithful and practiced his religion in his home. Oh, this next one is really good. Our next word is invidious. Invidious is an adjective, and we call something invidious when it's likely to promote resentment or anger or bad feelings in other people, or if there's something that's kind of unfairly discriminating or something that's unjust. Putting it into a sentence, we could say, treating some people in society differently than others is invidious and cruel. So if some people in society are treated better than others, then you have a situation that is likely to make certain people feel angry and resentful. We could also say, it is invidious for parents to play favorites with their children, so it is unjust and unfair and likely to make one child angry at the other child or angry at the parents if a parent plays favorites, so treats one child better than they treat the other child. Our next word is ingenuous. Ingenuous is an adjective, and it means showing innocence or kind of childlike simplicity, being naive or innocent. To use ingenuous in a sentence, we could say, she was so ingenuous that her friends feared that her innocence and trustfulness would be exploited when she visited the big city. So she was so childlike and innocent that her friends were afraid she would be taken advantage of when she moved to the city. We could also say, the baby stared at his mother with ingenuous love. So the baby stared at his mother with a kind of childlike and innocent love. Our next word is investiture. Investiture is a noun, and it means a ceremony that provides or gives authority to someone. So we could say, every 4 years, the President of the United States participates in an investiture that gives him the authority to rule for the next 4 years. So every 4 years, the President takes part in a ceremony called the inauguration that provides him or her the authority to rule and govern. A similar example might be, when the old emperor died, an investiture was held to give the new emperor the crown. Our next word is xenophobia. Xenophobia is a fear or hatred of foreigners or strangers. We could say, countries that have more xenophobia often have more restrictive immigration policies than countries that are more open to foreigners. So countries that have more fear of foreigners or strangers often make it harder for those very strangers or foreigners to enter the country. The adjective form of xenophobia is xenophobic. So if we wanted to use xenophobic in a sentence, we could say, the xenophobic old man yelled imprecations at the immigrants. That's actually quite an unpleasant sentence, but I think it illustrates the definitions of both xenophobic and imprecations quite well. So this old man, who is afraid of and hateful towards foreigners or strangers, is yelling curse words at them. It's not a good look, my friends. Not a good look. Our next word is larceny. Larceny is a noun, and it means the theft of property. To put it in a sentence, we could say, the crime of stealing a wallet can be categorized as petty larceny. So the crime of stealing the wallet can be categorized as the theft of property. Pretty clear. Another example could be, larceny is something to be avoided. So the theft of property is something you should probably avoid. Our next word is attenuate. Attenuate is a verb, and it means to reduce in force, to weaken. To put attenuate in a sentence, we could say, the constant fighting attenuated the soldiers' morale. So the constant fighting weakened the soldiers' spirits and self-confidence. We could also say, the man's love of walking was attenuated by the growing blister on his big toe. So the man's love of walking was weakened or reduced by the blister on his foot. Our next word is inter. Inter is a verb, and it means to bury. To use inter in a sentence, we could say, after my grandfather's funeral, he was interred at the cemetery. So after the funeral, my grandfather was buried at the cemetery. Inter is often used in reference to people's bodies. So you would almost always use this word to describe the burying of someone's body, and you wouldn't normally say something like, the pirate interred the chest of gold. To give this word the opposite meaning, actually, all you have to do is add the letters dis to the beginning, and then you have disinter. And this word can be used a little bit more playfully. You could say something like, the dog disinterred his bone from the backyard. So the dog dug up his bone from the backyard. That's disinter. Inter, disinter. Our next word is abstemious. Abstemious is an adjective, and it means moderate or restrained. Someone who's kind of strict with themselves, someone who kind of tries to control their appetite for all things. To use it in a sentence, we could say, my abstemious uncle eats only 3 apples a day. So my restrained or strict uncle eats only 3 apples a day, and that's what makes him abstemious. We could also say, although he claimed to be abstemious, he ate 4 burritos and 2 chickens at one meal. So while he claimed to have a kind of moderate appetite, he actually ate a ridiculous amount of food. Our next word is ardor. So ardor is a noun, and it means intense and passionate feeling. So we could say, Lucy's ardor for reading was made clear by her enormous library. So Lucy's intense passion for reading was made clear by the huge number of books she owned. We could also say, the student's ardor for learning English was evident by his daily practice. So the student's passion for learning English was made clear by the fact that he practiced English every day. We could also say, her ardor for spaghetti meant that she ate it every single night. We could also say something like, Romeo and Juliet's ardor for one another led them to do something extreme. So Romeo and Juliet's passion for one another led them to do something extreme, in this case, take poison. Our next word is calumny. Calumny is a noun, and it means making false statements about someone in order to damage their reputation. To use it in a sentence, we could say, the unscrupulous politician used calumny to bring down his opponent. So the politician used false statements about his opponent to undermine his opponent. We could also say, the woman accused the newspaper of publishing many calumnies about her. So the woman accused the newspaper of publishing many false statements about her. That's calumny. Oh, our next word is actually related. Our next word is canard. So a canard is a lie, a falsehood, something you say that isn't true. To use canard in a sentence, we could say, the tabloid's front page story about a bat giving birth to a human child was clearly a canard. We could also say, my brother has a reputation for telling many canards. So my brother has a reputation for telling many lies. Our next word is knell. So knell is a noun, and it means the sound of a funeral bell or an omen of death or failure. To use it in a sentence, we could say, when the villagers heard the knell from the church bell tower, they knew that their mayor had died. So when the villagers heard the tolling of the church bell, they knew that it was a sign that their mayor had died. Knell is an advanced word that you probably won't have to use very frequently, unless, who knows, maybe you're an undertaker and you're trying to learn English. To give you one more example, we could say, when my grandmother died, the church bells sang their death knell. So when my grandmother died, the church bells rang to signal her death, her passing. I think we have time for one more word, so let's make it a good one. Okay, here's one. This is a good one. Our next word is augury. So augury is a noun, and it means a prophecy or a prediction of events, kind of an omen. To use it in a sentence, we could say, Jasmine hoped the rainbow was an augury of good things to come. So Jasmine hoped that the rainbow was a sign or a prediction, an omen, a prophecy of good things to come. We could also say, for a price, a fortune teller will give you an augury of your future. So for a price, a fortune teller will give you a prophecy or a prediction of what will happen in your future. That's augury. All right, With that, we've gone over another list of hyper-advanced English vocabulary words. I hope most of these words were new to many of you, and I hope you found this lesson helpful. Subscribe below, give us a like if you found this video useful, and please let us know in the comment section what else you'd like to learn or see in our next walk and study lesson. Thanks guys, take care.